Being able to farm torches early in ladder is a huge advantage in Diablo 2. Torches trade for a lot around the start of ladder and tend to greatly lose value after the first 2 weeks. With the right gear and preparation, soloing Ubers can be done with a fairly cheap Smiter build. There are a lot of options for most gear slots, but today I'm going to be focusing on the cheapest but most effective ladder reset Smiter that I can. Please like the video, please subscribe, and let's get into it. No matter what gear you end up attaining, there are a few key things we need to keep in mind. With a max Fana aura, you will only need 40% increased IAS to hit the max breakpoint for Smite. You want to get as close to 100% crushing blow as possible. Open wounds works for Smite and prevents bosses from healing. Enhanced damage does not work with Smite. Elemental damage does not work with Smite. Lifesteal does not work with Smite. Deadly Strike does not work with Smite. Overstacking resistances helps a lot when you're fighting the Ubers. Salvation is almost necessary for a cheap build. Having cold, fire, and lightning absorb is a real lifesaver. Having one source of Lifetap will make your life a lot easier. For armor, we're going to go with the rune word Treachery, which is Shale, Thal, and Lem. The base for the rune word does not have to be perfect, or even have to have that high of a defense. The main reason for using Treachery is the lesser fade proc. This will give you extra resistances when you're hit, and you likely need them because we're not going to have an Annie or Torch for doing the Ubers. The increased attack speed on Treachery also hits the 40% breakpoint with Smite. For an amulet, we have a lot of options. Normally I would say High Lords, but we already have the IAS breakpoint with Treachery, so any rare or blue amulets with nice resistance bonuses would be really good here. If you're lucky enough to have one with all res and plus the skills, definitely use that. A Seraph's or a Mara's is good here too, but we're not going to have that at the beginning of ladder. Now we need to get as much crushing blow as possible. This will be attained through using a G-face in our helm slot and goblin toes in our boots, giving us 60%. The bonus to strength and FHR from the G-face is also super helpful in making our build a little bit safer. For this build, we're most likely going to put one socket in the G-face and put an in there for extra resistances. Depending on what you can afford, there are a lot of options for the weapon slot. Grief is a common favorite but requires a low rune, which is hard to get at the beginning of ladder. The black rune word, Thal, Io, and Nef, is a super viable option as it adds 40% crushing blow, which would put us at 100% with Gores and G-face. I would always use a phase blade for rune words when smiting as it keeps the IS breakpoint very low. Another cheap rune word with crushing blow is Strength, which is and Tier, which comes with enhanced damage and 35% crushing blow. The damage is really low in this weapon. Personally for this video, I'm going to go with the black rune word. When you're using a cheap Smiter, it's very important to get the crushing blow either at 100% or as close to as possible. For the shield slot, I'll be using a Spirit and a cheap Paladin shield. Normally I would never use a Spirit on a Smiter, but the huge FHR boost, all skills, and resistances are all very useful for our build. For my rings, the main thing I want is cold and fire absorb. So I'm going to be going with a Ravenfrost and Dwarf Star ring. The attack rating on Ravenfrost is a really nice bonus. You can absolutely get these rings for cheap, but it may be difficult to find on the first week of ladder. If you can't get these rings, look for rings with bonuses to attack rating and resistances bonuses. If you can't get sources of fire and cold absorb, just be sure to run Salvation through the entire Uber Tristram. For the belt, T-Gods is amazing for light absorb, but a rare or blue belt with PDR would also work really well here. The same thing goes for light absorb as cold and fire. If you don't have a source for it, use Salvation for the entire time you're in Uber Tristram. Now, it's very important to get a source of Lifetap. The best cheap source of Lifetap is Drax Gloves, but we're probably going to be too poor at ladder reset to use these. So another option is to get a Lifetap wand. I hate this method personally, as you have to swap weapons every few seconds to keep the Lifetap proc. Sometimes it's the only way to activate Lifetap before finding Drax Gloves. Once you make some currency from farming torches, you can upgrade to an Exile for your source of Lifetap. It also adds a lot of smite damage. Exile also procs Defiance, which gives you a shitload of defense. So with all that in mind, I need to decide which gloves to use. Laying of Hands are still a nice option with the 350 enhanced damage to demons, and they're an easy find and very cheap to buy. However, we don't need the increased attack speed because Treachery has 45%, and in fact, our rune word Black adds 15. I may still go with Laying of Hands just for the 350 enhanced damage to demons, but there are many rare gloves that could work for this build. Use as many resistance charms as you can get your hands on, and you do not need any skillers to make this work. One extra thing you're going to want is a teleport staff. You have two options here. You can use Naja's staff, or you can open a cow level next to a Kara, check her for a staff that grants teleport charges, Go into the cow level, and as soon as you come back from the cow level, the vendor will have reset their items. You repeat this until you find a tele staff. The faster hit recovery from Spirit and G-Phase both really help with teleporting. And the reason we want to teleport is to get to the mini Ubers without having to fight all the monsters leading up to them. There is a very low chance that you are going to have a CTA for this, so a Lifetap wand on swap might be the best option here. Doing mini Ubers and Uber Tristram on a cheap pally is still risky, and you're probably going to die. It's always a good idea to perm the game, so wait in the game for 2 minutes, so that dying isn't that big of a deal. You just rejoin and try again. Max Smite, max Holy Shield, and max out Fanaticism, and I always make sure to get Vigor and Salvation Auras, just 1 point in each, and put 1 point into Zeal, and the remaining points into Sacrifice, because Sacrifice gives you more damage on Zeal than Zeal gives to Zeal. And then if you have any points remaining, you put them into Zeal, and I use Zeal to clear mobs, especially in the mini Uber areas. Put enough into Strength and Dexterity for gear and max block, and then dump the rest into Vitality. You're not going to have a CTA, you need as much health as you can get. The best thing to do is separate the Ubers and fight them one at a time. I always go for Mephisto first, Bale second, and Diablo last. To see the pathway that I take, the safest pathway, it's not the fastest, check out the video in the link above. Because you are on a budget build and it would be during the first week or two of ladder, you really should run Salvation for the entire Uber Trist run, and for the mini Uber Lilith. When fighting Mephisto, keep a close eye on your health and don't be afraid to use a lot of rejuvenation potions. Bale is the easiest of the three, you just have to keep an eye on your mana because of his mana burn, but finally just make sure your rejuves are filled in your belt and then go after Diablo. Diablo's ads can really fuck you up, so just don't be afraid to use a lot of rejuvenation potions. Every time you beat one of the Ubers, run away, refill your belt, and come back. That's it for my video on building a budget Smiter in LOD Diablo 2. I hope this helps you guys get ready for D2R, and you're all as excited for it to come out as I am. Thank you, everyone.